Hi there, my name is Ryan Chatterson, and during today's session we're going to be discussing aquaponic leafy green and herb production. Now, just a quick overview, why grow leafy greens and herbs? Why would we want to select these to grow in our system? Okay, well, first off, they're a low risk crop. Low risk because of how fast they grow, and they're very easy to replace if something bad were to happen. It's a high value crop, okay? Salad greens, lettuce crops, other unseasonable greens like Swiss chard, kales, a lot of your culinary herbs, they're all high value crops. And for the work that you're putting into them, you get a lot of money out of them. All right, high demand. They're in high demand pretty much everywhere in the US and you know, many other parts of the world, depending on where you're learning this from. Only a few areas that they don't really value lettuce, salad greens, herbs, things like that, okay? They grow exceptionally well in an aquaponic environment. So that's utilizing the nutrients from fish waste to grow these plants. They grow extremely well using this method. It's hard to grow in many climates and soils, okay? So there's a lot of places on earth that you can't grow a head of bib lettuce or beautiful salad greens, you know, basil, Genovese basil, thyme, mint. There's a lot of places where this just will not grow good in the ground, and aquaponics really solves that problem for us. It's a fast turnover, like I mentioned, that kind of goes right with the low risk crop. If it takes me 40 to 45 days to grow a head of lettuce from the time we drop the seed in to the time we harvest the entire head, that's 45 days for something to go wrong with it, and you've got a finished product. If you think about something like a tomato plant, if you're growing that for a year, you have 1 year that you have pests, disease, things like that that could affect that vine. So it's a lot higher risk crop than, again, something like a lettuce or a Swiss chard, kale, other green. So they are, again, low nutrient requirements. We can get a lot out of just a little bit of fish food. And because the requirements are lower than, say, a tomato plant, well, that means the fish tanks can be lower, the stocking density is lower, filtration's lower, all the equipment's lower, the building for the fish is lower, etc. So that's really good when you're doing, you know, a cost analysis, a business plan, and you're looking at numbers. Well, that's a good thing about leafy greens and herbs. They don't take anywhere near as much fish food to grow the crop. So feeding rates should be on the lower end of the spectrum, like I just mentioned. University of Virgin Island feeding rates, where they discharge the solids daily, are 5.6 to 9.3 grams per square foot, which is, again, 60 to 100 grams per square meter. And for lettuce, in this type of system, you would use around 5.6 to 6.5 grams per square foot to grow lettuce. So it's on the low end of that feeding spectrum. Chatterson Farms, here at my farm, we have zero discharge. We break everything down. Our feeding rates are 1 gram to 3.2 grams, like you've seen in the chart, per day, which is 10.7 to 34 grams per square meter. And for lettuce, we're starting out lettuce in a lot of the leafy greens until you get into a more mature Swiss chards and kales and larger leafy green products. We're right at the bottom of our feeding scale, 1 gram per square foot, which is 10.7 grams per square meter. So, you know, we're a sixth of what you would use in the UVI system. What does that mean? 6 times smaller fish tanks, 6 times smaller filtration, etc., etc., etc. It's much more efficient. We can get in the door quicker with less expense, and we can still get the same profit out. And that's a winning combination there, okay? So again, I would suggest you're doing primarily leafy greens in my type of system. 1 gram per square foot is where you want to start out, and you can slightly adjust up from there if you're growing some higher nutrient crops. And you would refer back to those PF charts showing the plant factors and how much food for the different species of plants to get an idea of what you want to be feeding. Now, let's say you are doing half of your greenhouse and the plant factor is a 1.5 for that crop that you're growing, and the other half in the same water is 1.0. Well, we want to add those together, right? 1.0, 1.5, and divide by 2 to get an average. So the average there would be 1.25 grams per square foot as a plant factor. So just think about that. That's why you have all those different values. So you can estimate the crops you're going to grow, and then you can add up the factors and get an average of how much food do you actually need to put into that system to cater to those different varieties growing at the same time. But it's fairly easy, and that's why I provided the information. So since we're promoting vegetative growth of the leaves, we require a higher nitrogen ratio in comparison to the phosphorus and the potassium, all right? So that high nitrogen promotes leafy plant growth, and that's what leafy green vegetables thrive on. Most herbs that you're going to grow, you're growing them for their leaves, not for their seeds, unless it's something like coriander. But that's the minority. Most of these you're growing for the vegetative growth. That's what you want. Okay, so we want higher nitrogen ratios than what we've talked about for the tomato plants, etc., that have a little bit lower nitrogen ratios, especially during the fruiting phases. pH will range between 5.5 and 6.5 for almost all of these species that you're going to cultivate that are within, the leafy green and the herb categories. Of course, there's always going to be some that go outside of that range, but that's the main range we'll be working in. Recommended air circulation. So we talked about this. We already know how to figure out air circulation from our tomato and our cucumber talk. Same way here for our leafy greens, okay? And I would recommend 2 times the greenhouse square footage per hour, and change that answer to cubic feet for the CFM sizing. So a pretty high fan still in leafy green production because we're growing them densely, all right? That's the big because. If you're not growing them as densely, you don't need anywhere near the fan speed. But if we're really making use of this facility, so something like the picture of Bright Farms that I showed that has, the entire floor space is lettuce. Well, we need adequate air movement so you don't get humidity that forms a microclimate down there where the lettuce is growing or other greens and cause mold and mildew issues and things like that. All right, and the fans actually also help with pests. If you have pests fluttering around looking for somewhere, if you have constant air movement, a lot of times when they get in the greenhouse, they're going to get caught in that draft, fling right across the whole greenhouse, and then going right out the other side. So it helps all around. As far as lighting, 12 to 16 hours of daylight minimum, and we're looking at 12 hours minimum, but 12 to 16 hours a day is preferred, and a minimum of intensity of 1,800 candle feet per hour, or 19,369 lux. So we'll go through a few formulas for sizing lighting equipment when we talk about indoor growing I believe the session is next week actually. So I'll give you some formulas for that so you can see a little bit more in depth on how we calculate the light intensity and the energy that these plants need to grow. But this is just kind of I'd say a nice number to know if you're out in your greenhouse with the light meter and you're trying to figure out, hey, do I have enough light in this area to grow plants? Well, here's your minimums. And plants will grow at higher light intensities, but water and air temps have to be in the preferred range for good growth. Okay, so these are our minimum lighting intensities there, but you can grow lettuce outside in full sun in Florida, and if we're in the right temperature range, you're going to get beautiful heads of lettuce that are full, dense, and look great. So, I wouldn't worry about having too strong of light. It's more about the minimum light, and again, a lot of that goes back to if you're doing this indoors or somewhere way up north where you need supplemental lighting at certain times of the year. Temperatures are best kept in the 72 to 76 degree Fahrenheit range, though a few select species will thrive at higher and lower temperatures. An example here is Malabar spinach. It thrives in temperatures in the 80 degree Fahrenheit range. It's a subtropical vining spinach variety. And mosh and crisp head lettuces thrive at 69 degrees Fahrenheit. So on the opposite end of the spectrum, they really like a cooler, crisper environment. And that has to do with where these originate from. A lot of the greens, I'd say over 90% of the leafy greens that you're going to come across, and herbs, they originate from Eastern Europe, okay? So you got to think about Eastern European climate. It's not a hot tropical climate, okay? These are, think more England, more, you know, France, that kind of area. The climates are a little cooler. They have a little lower light intensities, and they do have seasons. So that's kind of where a lot of these plants originate from, although they've spread out around the globe now and we've adapted them into different environments. Many varieties on the market, all right? There's over 10,000 varieties of lettuce out there, and new varieties are being created every year. I have personally trialed over 200 varieties in our aquaponics system, so over 200 types of just lettuce. And guess what? They all grew. It's not a matter of if the lettuce type is going to grow for you. I'd say it's a matter of find out what's going to make the most money in your market there, okay? What do your clients want to purchase? A lot of times it's not going to be 200 varieties of lettuce. It's 3 or 4. Bib lettuce, romaine lettuce, you know, some light leafy green lettuce, and some red lettuce. Could be a bib, a romaine, etc. So you talk to your chefs about that. But as adventurous as we can get, you can literally walk into one of your clients' shops, you know, restaurant, whatever, and bring a seed catalog magazine with you and let them pick out what color lettuce you want. For, you know, what color lettuce they want for their menu or for their dinner party or whatever, because you can actually grow anything in that catalog. That's not a problem. It's a problem of just picking out what the consumer wants and then making sure you can match the environmental conditions. So again, we gave you broad ranges there, but something like a head of bib lettuce. Well, if you're at 90 degrees Fahrenheit, you're not going to you know, go to your restaurant, have them pick out a head bib lettuce and then try to grow it. It's not going to grow like that picture. You need to match the environmental requirements. But as long as you do that, again, and this comes down to temperature and lighting, then you can grow anything in that catalog. You just let them pick out what color, leaf texture, etc. that they want. You order the seeds and you can grow that specialty, you know, specific for them. So just know that you're not limited by the variety, you're limited by what people are actually going to buy from you. Bigger is not always better, so a lot of people you'll see grow heads of lettuce this big and they're holding them up like a giant trophy, but I can grow a head of lettuce this big and sell it for just as much as that head of lettuce that took up, you know, 4 times as much room. And that's because, for one, you have to know your marketplace, but in the vast majority of consumer marketplaces, people are not buying, you know, 15, 20-inch heads of lettuce. Maybe in the islands, in certain areas, in a village, yeah, that's going to be prized and people will buy that. But nobody wants to buy that. And if you're buying it by weight, that might be a $15 or $20 head of lettuce. Nobody's going to buy that, okay? What they want is small, compact, and beautiful. That's what is in, and that's what will sell, okay? So don't think bigger is always better. A small, compact, good-looking head will every day sell as much as that big giant head. And go to your grocery store. Look at the wrapped lettuce that is, you know, got a rubber band around it and it's selling for $2 to $3 and it's fairly large. And then look at the small heads of bib lettuce that are hydroponically grown selling for $4 to $5. And it's in a tiny little clamshell cellophane pack. Smaller head, shorter production time, more money. Makes sense, all right? When selecting a variety to grow, consider the following. Who is your consumer and what do they value? Is it a baby leafed product? Is it some type of red variety of lettuce? Is it bib lettuce? How easy is it going to be to harvest? Okay, a bib is a single cut. You might remove 2 leaves off the bottom and it's ready to go. If you're growing a big spring mix, you're going to do a cut across the bottom and have to remove a few leaves from each one of those micro heads in the mix, and that takes a lot more time to harvest and to get into a presentable form. Okay, how big will the final product be? Okay, that makes a difference on how we're going to package it, how we're going to transport it. All right, those are all tied together with how big is it going to be. Now, how much will the product weigh? Well, are you selling it by weight or are you selling it by quantity? That makes a big difference. I do everything I can to sell by quantity and not by weight of product. But as you move from a smaller marketplace to a wholesale marketplace, everything, pretty much everything is sold on a weight basis, not in a quantity basis. And then we go down to how long will it keep? Lettuce, typically for us, 3 weeks. It keeps a long time when you harvest it fresh and put it into, say, cold storage. Now, I don't have cold storage at my farm. This is in my refrigerator. It will keep 3 weeks. We harvest everything fresh, usually morning of sale, and we get it right to our consumers. So that's harder on me not having cold storage, but it was less of an upfront expense to get everything going. And we're in the process of building a cold storage and a processing facility over the next year. And that's just part of our building the farm and growing what we can do here. All right. How much grow space does it take up? That's huge. Again, if it's not, the market doesn't call for a big head, you're shooting yourself in the foot by growing a big head, because it's going to take longer, take up more space, and you're going to get less money for it. So just keep all this in mind and look for what sells. And I can tell you, like I've said, small, pretty, compact, those are the varieties that sell. Green lettuce outsells red lettuce 3-to-1 in the U.S. marketplace. Okay, just to throw that out there. I love red lettuce. I love to grow it. But I have even seen this in my own market research that you can have green lettuce and red lettuce up all day. You will sell 3 times more of that green lettuce than you will of the red lettuce. So just keep that in mind. It's something that is ingrained in people's heads that lettuce should be green. So most people are going to want green lettuce. Even though red lettuce is fancy, it's unique, it's every day out there selling, it's not going to sell like green lettuce. Packaging lettuce in a clear plastic clamshell container will increase the selling price, but it also increases the time, labor, and space needed. So when I was initially doing some market research at my own farmers markets that I work, I would sell lettuce normally for $3 a head, and then after a few months I put them in clear clamshell containers and bumped the price up $1, and we sold just as many. Okay, so we got an extra $1 by packaging it in a 25-cent petroleum product. Not the best thing. You don't want to, personally, I don't like taking a beautiful, rich, healthy, organic product and then sealing it in plastic and shipping it off. But guess what? That's what people are used to seeing a premium product in. And just by doing that, you're raising your bottom line. The main problem for us is we sell a lot of lettuce, and I'm limited on how much I can get up to the market due to my vehicle, so and our transportation. So to do this, it takes up like 3 to 4 times as much space to actually pre-package these in clamshells and bring them up to the market. So there's a little bit of a trade-off there, because it does take up more time and more labor to actually package these nice into the package, seal them up, and then package them and get them to the market. So sale with live roots is possible. I see a lot of people do live root sale, which is very common in hydroponic lettuce, but I personally do not suggest it, okay? We're not dealing with a sterile root mass. Now, hydroponics isn't completely sterile, but you don't have small, worms living in the aquatic environment. You don't have a lot of the organisms that we have in aquaponics. And if you pull a live root mass out and you package it up in something like that, a lot of times you will see life moving around in those roots. Well, in most areas, people do not want to see that on their food. They love to hear that it's pesticide free, but if they ever see a bug on it, they are going to freak out, okay? So the majority, now a lot of the people that are more earthy, they get it. They know that, hey, pesticide free, there's gonna be some bugs involved, maybe I might find something here and there. The vast majority of people don't want to see it. That's just the cold hard truth, okay? So last thing you want to do is put live roots in there where maybe you have a midge fly larva comes squirreling out and there's a little red worm crawling around on their head of lettuce, or several other things. The other problem here is if there's going to be a food safety problem, okay, some type of contamination where there was E. coli that were to get into the system water and transfer to a plant, this is how it's going to happen. It's probably not going to happen from a little splash up on a leaf. It's going to happen from somebody that pulls out the root mass wet with system water, packages it up, and it has a chance to just sit there and fester and touch the leaves and be in that environment until that person takes it home and maybe or maybe not rinses the product off, and that might not even take care of that pathogen, okay? So I see this as a huge vector. Even though it's nice to sell it as a live product, it's a huge vector, and I'm not personally willing to leave myself open to that using aquaponics. We know that there are chances for bad pathogens to get into the water that we don't want. Okay, now there hasn't been a big outbreak in aquaponics that has hurt a lot of people or caused deaths, you know, something that bad, but it will happen eventually, okay? And the more lax we are about this stuff, the greater those chances go up. So if you're a producer right now and you are selling a live product, you know, I'm not hating on you. You do what you feel is right for you. But personally, I don't feel that's right for the operation, and I feel like it's a big liability. And you don't want to be the one person to do that. God forbid you get people sick or worse than that with your product. I don't know how much I'd want to farm after doing that. So that's a big deal. Again, we serve our product to cancer patients, to children, to all kinds of people. That's not something I want to have to worry about, and it's not a liability that I'm worth taking the risk for. So we harvest in place. We put them in our coolers or whatever packaging we're going to do, and then when we're done with everything and have moved our product out of the greenhouse, then we move the boards, take care of the root mass, and do whatever we're going to do with the rest of the plant matter. So we make sure to really try to minimize any kind of contact. Even though I see people drink the water, we know so much about this, seems healthy, there's still that chance, and because there's that chance, we don't do it. Okay, I'll move on. 8-inch spacing works best overall for lettuce varieties. That's what I've found. The majority of varieties, if you're going to actually grow them to maturity, you need an 8-inch spacing. Now there are some large varieties where you're going to need a 12, maybe even 16-inch spacing. And there's some really small varieties, like if you're just doing Bib lettuce, you can actually grow them at a 6-inch spacing because there's a nice, tight, compact plant. A miniature romaine, 6-inch spacing because they grow upright and they don't grow out. But those are few types of plants like that. And if you plan out what you're going to grow before you actually drill the holes in your rafts, well, you can do rafts specifically at the spacing for whatever plants you're going to grow. But our whole greenhouse, everything is drilled out at 8-inch spacing. And if I need to skip, maybe I need them 16 inches, 24 inches apart for, say, tomato plants, well, I just skip several holes and plant them out at that density. But it's, everything in my operation is 8-inch spacing. It's really the familiar number for all plants we're going to grow. But if you need to do something different, by all means. If I was just doing a tomato greenhouse, well, we know we're not going to grow them 6 inches apart. So I would probably just drill those rafts at 24 inches apart, or, a minimum 4 square feet for the tomato plants, so we don't have a bunch of extra holes. But the extra holes, I've used them, I've grown with them. The extra light coming into the raft does not hinder growth. And you can tell that by the millions of pictures that I post. Okay, some favorite varieties here. Rex Bib lettuce. This is your standard hydroponic Bib lettuce, and it's called Rex. Okay, that's one of my favorites. It's a big seller, and we can typically get $3 to $4 per head selling that in a local environment. And when you get out selling this wholesale, you're probably looking closer $1.75 to $2. You get into a real large marketplace, it might even drop down to $1. So prices change, but that's a really good one, and it grows quick. This is one of your quickest growing lettuces from start to finish. We've also got the Salanova Premier Collection. That's from Johnny's Seeds, and there's other places around the world that are that have the rights to sell this. Beautiful types of green butterhead, red butterhead, green oak leaf, and red oak leaf, but they're all baby leaves. So when you grow a head, you can cut the core out and every leaf drops out and is fairly uniform and a baby leaf size. So that really hits that baby leaf marketplace. Also Lola Rosa, Rue de Hiver, Encore Spring Mix, Black Seeded Simpson, and Montestone are some other favorites that we like to grow here. This is a beautiful picture of a nice mix. You can actually see some heads of Rex Bib lettuce hiding in here. There's some romaine lettuce here, and then a lot of this other is basically spring mix, which you can see there's multiple varieties coming up in one hole. But there's a nice variety picture of lettuce. This is up at the rooftop greenhouse when I used to work there. So Swiss chard, we'll move over to the next variety. All right, this comes in a variety of colors. It's sold as an individual species, okay, such as white Swiss chard, yellow Swiss chard, etc., or as a seed mix where you get rainbow chard and you get a big mix of all the different colors. They also sell that as a bright lights chard mix. The leaves, large leaves remain tender due to the constant access to water and protection from strong winds. So because we're growing this in a structure, we're not getting constant battering of winds, which creates micro fractures in that leaf structure. And when it heals tougher. It makes a tougher leaf. That's what you get with a lot of terrestrial, outdoor, field-grown crops. So people see a large leaf and they think, oh, that's no good, you'd never eat that. Well, you'd never eat that if it was grown in the dirt in the ground out in the middle of a field. But the way we grow it, they stay delicious and tender, and the leaves get so big you can use them as like large wraps for tacos or for all kinds of different culinary meals that a normal person buying this product can't do. So it gives you something extra to offer to chefs, something a little more unique. 2.5 part per million iron I would keep for intense colors. Okay, the rest of the feeding is gonna basically take care of your necessities, and the buffering with calcium and potassium takes care of any necessities there with these greens. There's nothing crazy that you have to do. We just keep the pH where we need it by alternating with potassium and calcium, and we keep our iron within that 2.5 part per million range. And you're going to grow beautiful, great plants. All right, it's that easy. These are, I can't explain how easy it is. People, I think if they just got access to the right information the first time, you would see so many more success stories out there. But people, there's a lot of information to go through. All right, so varieties here that we grow at Chatterson Farms is Ford Hook Giant. That's a giant green with white stem type of Swiss chard. Bright Lights Mix, Prima Rosa, which is a pink stem Swiss chard with a kind of a mottled orange leaf, and a bright yellow Swiss chard. Those are the 4 types, and that's pretty much all the types, but people really like the colorful mix. But a lot of people, say from Italy, a lot of our foreign travelers, they want the green leaf with the white stem. They do not want the colored leaves. And personally, taste-wise, I prefer the green with the white stem. They're not as pretty, but I like the taste. They're almost the same, but there's a little difference there. But again, the colors bring people in, and you'll get that when I show you a picture here in a minute. This is a cool weather crop, but can definitely be grown into the summer with some shade. We can grow it right through the year here in Florida, so I know most of the rest of you can probably do the same, but we need heavy shade during the summer or you get a lot of leaf wilt. And though the plants will make it through that brings in pests, and that's what's a problem. You get leaf wilt, you get a lot of aphids and things that come in, and then all that pressure on the plants is a lot for them to deal with. Wilting may occur during the day at higher temperatures, but the plants will recover their turgidity at night, which is their rigidness. And wilting can be hastened with increased calcium levels. So if we favor calcium more than potassium in the middle of summer, we'll build stronger cell walls within that leaf structure. Stronger cell walls mean it's not going to transpire quite so much, and that plant's not going to wilt quite as much in the heat of the summer. So that's a little trick that I use with lettuces, with any greens here, is we just beef up that calcium a little bit. And by doing that and creating the stronger cell walls, we're able to not go so limp during those hot moments, and don't bring in the bad bugs, don't bring in a lot of those other problems that we incur during the summertime. They can be harvested as a whole plant, or the outer leaves can be removed and the plant left to regrow. So I suggest the cut and come again method, the second. We never cut the whole plant, harvest it, and sell that at the market, because it takes a while for these plants to get to the size where they're actually producing good amounts of leaves. The last thing you want to do is right when it's at that size and it's taken maybe 6 to 8 weeks to get there, and it's finally putting out big leaves, is you cut the whole plant and throw it away or sell it. Well, what you could do is cut every leaf off but the middle 4, and within 2 weeks it will regrow and you'll be back bigger than that original size plant. So another 2 weeks to reproduce, say, another plant, or another 8 weeks. Doesn't make sense. It has never made sense to me. And if your market likes the whole plant, well, you better be getting 4 times as much for it than we're getting for our leaves. And that's probably not happening. So cut and come again and grow these plants for a while. We grow our crops for 5 to 6 months and then replant to keep the plants productive. So after 5 to 6 months, they will also start to distort a 2-inch hole that we drill for the net cups that we plant into. So because, again, everything in our system, I use a 2-inch hole with a 2-inch net cup. That's what we plant into. Well, if you're specifically growing longer term crops, bigger based crops, something like that, don't go with the 2-inch net pot. Go with something like a 3-inch net pot, something a little larger. And that's what I would suggest. If you're going longer than 5 to 6 months with these, it will distort the 2-inch hole and it'll start to blow it out just from the pressure of the base getting larger and just expanding. You know, you want to take that into account. For me, long-term crops also, they have more of a chance of having something happen, having bugs come in, getting weaker, something like that. So I like to refresh it and keep the crops fresh, and they produce a lot better for us. And if you're doing this and you do want to keep them going, some can go for over a year. I've seen some go for 1.5 years, and they split out multiple heads and new heads shoot off and put out new leaf growth. So if you keep them in the right environment, these plants can really grow for a long time. Okay, and there's a beautiful picture of rainbow chard. You can see the different colors there. This one right in the middle is actually the Primorosa. So if you buy Primorosa, it'll all be this one type. It's kind of a different rainbow color. It's got purple and orange and green. But you see all the rest of the colors. And then here on the right is the Ford Hook Giant, where you've got the beautiful dark green, high, rich in iron leaf, and then you've got a bright white stem in it. But this on the table at a marketplace or coming into a restaurant when you're trying to sell vegetables, whether people like Swiss chard or not, it's beautiful and it catches their attention and brings them over to your table. So, and again, you don't see it looking that good in a grocery store. That's because that's right after you cut it. You cut it, get it on the table that morning at a market, people are going to buy it next to a rubber banded up stack that looks like it's been, you know, dropped in dirt 10 times and is wilted from being off the plant for a few days. So we can outcompete anybody when we're producing this and serving it fresh. And that's it for this session. Again, if you have any questions at all, please email me, ryan@collegeofaquaponics.com, and I will be sure to cover those questions in our weekly question and answer session and make sure you get all the information that you need. Thank you very much.